plan to leave on Easter Sunday, 31st of March, weather permitting. Our destination is the Algarve in the south of Portugal. The most direct route means leaving Dublin, sailing non-stop for 7 to 10 days, about 2,000 kilometres, 1,050 nautical miles or so, and eventually arriving in the Algarve, someplace like Lagos or Portimao. However, 7 to 10 days non-stop sailing in a small boat, especially with only 2 crew, is tough going. So most people break up the journey. Dublin to Brest, or maybe stopping in Land's End, and then a 500 kilometre dash across Biscay to La Coruña, and then 1,000 kilometres down the coast of Portugal and the north of Spain, with plenty of options to pull into places along the way. And finally then 30 kilometres into Lagos or Portimao, or there's a choice of ports along the Algarve there to reach your final destination. It's about the same distance. It's maybe an extra 100 or 200 kilometres, but it'll take much longer because every time you stop, you're going to stop for a couple of days. You're going to taste the local hospitality, and that will delay you. But they are nice places to visit, and that's a typical route that people would take going to the Algarve. However, we'll have to take a more gentle approach. One reason being that we continue to have problems with the new engine we installed as part of our refit 2 years ago. Now, the good people in Volvo Penta assure us that there's no threat to our engine performance, function, or safety. However, the engine makes an unpleasant sound under certain circumstances, and its electronics malfunction on occasion. And, well, all the assurances in the world are little help when you're all alone at sea, and to say nothing of in the middle of the infamous Bay of Biscay. So we'll take a slowly catchy monkey approach, and we'll use the whole summer and maybe a bit either side to get to the Algarve. There are some upsides to this. We'll get to see lots of places along the way, and we'll only have to do a couple of overnight passages, which can be hard work. And in the meantime, the good people in Volvo Penta assure us that they will keep working to resolve the new engine's problems. The first leg of this journey is a very familiar hop down the coast to Wicklow. We like stopping here. We just tie up along the wall, which is fine in calm weather. In recent years, as well as the fishing fleet, there are some survey and wind farm boats. Still, there's usually room for us, and if not, we'll just tie on to another boat. The sailing club there is a very welcome spot to the passing sailor. From here, we'll take another short hop to Arklow. There's a marina on the river there, and Arklow is still an easy commute back home to Dublin. So it's easy to leave the boat there and come home for a few days if we're waiting for better weather. For the sake of the non-mariner, the tide flows up and down the Irish Sea for approximately 6 hours in each direction, and it flows at speeds of up to 3 nautical miles an hour, or 3 knots, sometimes even a little faster. Typically, our boat sails at about 6 nautical miles an hour, or 6 knots. So when we're planning a passage, we want to make sure we leave when the tide is going in the way we are. Short distances of only about 20 miles, like Dundee-Wicklow or Wicklow-Arklow, only take a few hours and are easily managed within a single tide. But the next leg of our journey to Kilmore Quay is 60 nautical miles. A nautical mile is about 15% longer than a land mile, by the way. So in 6 hours at 6 knots, we'll cover 36 miles. If the tide is with us for the entire 6 hours, I usually guesstimate that we'll get another 10 miles from the current. But that leaves us with 14 miles short. Fortunately though, the tide is at its slowest just before and just after it changes direction. So if we sail for 90 minutes either side of the south-going tide, we'll travel 9 times 6 is 54 miles, plus the 10 from the south-going tide gives us 64. And if we don't lose more than 5 miles to the north-going tide while it's at its slowest, we can just make Kilmore Quay. If it takes us longer, it just means we'll have a very slow approach into port. Besides, Aragorn can get up to 8 knots and more with the favourable winds. So there's every chance we'll cover the distance in 8 or even 7 hours. If you look at a map of the seas around Ireland, the Atlantic Ocean meets the Irish Sea at Carnsore Point in the southeast corner of Ireland. This has a finger over a running tap effect on the speed of the tide, so Carnsore is one of those places where the tide runs at its fastest. For this reason, most sailors try to make sure that they get around it before the tide turns against them. Kilmore Quay itself is one of the most important fishing ports on the south coast of Ireland. And more relevant to us, it has a well-serviced marina with space for visiting boats. It is also a pleasant holiday village with sandy beaches, hotels and a choice of restaurants and pubs, which makes it a great spot for boats to wait for a weather window to leave Ireland for the UK or Europe. And that, of course, is where we are headed. Weather permitting, we leave Kilmore Quay for Cornwall and France. But if the wind is in the southeast, that makes for an uncomfortable journey. If the weather forecast suggests that the wind is likely to stay in the southeast for some time, we can always cruise along the south coast of Ireland and then head directly to France when the wind suits us. Visiting ports like Dunmore East, Dungarvan, Crosshaven and even further west to Courtmacsherry and the beautiful Baltimore is no sacrifice at all. Last year and many times before, we've enjoyed warm welcomes in these fantastic places. But if the weather cooperates, we'll stop for a couple of nights in Newlyn in Cornwall before crossing the Channel to Laverack in France. Each of these legs is about 100 nautical miles, and this presents another challenge, as some part of the journey must be undertaken during darkness. Sailing at night or leaving Kilmore Quay in the dark present little concern for us, but we find leaving and especially arriving at an unfamiliar port in the black of night is pretty scary. More competent and braver sailors than us might have no qualms, but we prefer to target a mid-morning arrival after a passage greater than 70 miles or so. That way, we leave before sunset and we are in open sea during darkness. Even if we arrive early, we can hove to and wait the morning light to arrive with the dawn. And on a clear night, we get spectacular views of the night sky, unencumbered by light pollution. Once on the continent, we can resume day hops of 30 miles or so. The first one will be around the corner into the Rad de Brest. 70 square miles of bay that is so sheltered it is almost an inland sea. Comparing it to a more familiar scale, it is an area similar in size to the Irish Sea from north of Lambay all the way to Dalkey. Last time we were there, we met this guy. We were wrong to think it was us he was interested in. We soon saw that he was a boy dolphin, and he had mistaken our dinghy for a lady dolphin. And boy was he keen. We didn't capture it in camera, but that was no gun in his pocket. And let me tell you, if it was a rifle. From there, we'll spend about 6 weeks or so cruising the west coast of France. Some amazing places that we've been to in 2019 and 2008, like the Morbihan, a true inland sea, with the beautiful city of Vannes that we can sail right into. That's Aragorn, by the way, third from the right. And then on down the coast to La Rochelle and keep going right into the corner to the Basque Country and spend another 6 weeks or so cruising the north of Spain. with their interesting traditions and refreshments, and on further west to the seaside towns that the Spanish themselves go to escape the summer heat. Then Galicia, the great city of La Coruña, and round Finisterre to the Spanish Rias, as beautiful as Bantry Bay, but several of them, and with the Spanish climate. Followed by Portugal, the cities of Porto and Lisbon, Viana do Castelo, Peniche, and dozens of other ports whose name I cannot remember. Before we finally turn the corner into the Algarve, we hope to arrive there in October. As we progress through the autumn, there might not be as many days suitable for sailing, but there's always plenty to do in port.